Well, hey, my name is Randy Beck, and I'm a pastor in the Richmond, Houston area. This is my story. It's one of emotional exhaustion, really a vanity of striving, a life lived absent of grace, and a season where joy was hard to find. Really, it's the story of a pastor who realized that simple reality that can't be ignored. And for me, it was this reality. After the brokenness of burnout, I can no longer afford to ignore the reality of my soul's brittleness. So my story reminds me of the old commercial, how many licks does it take to get to the center of the Tootsie Roll Tootsie Pop? I know you remember that commercial, many of you. How many licks does it take? How many licks before breaking or cracking? How many licks before you actually hit the last straw, really? And for me, it was after a call of ministry that came at 16 years old, opportunities to serve in college. I found my way into ministry with zeal. After 12 years, though, of course, life brought uncertainty, change. My family, now years into a church role that was in a different city, away from our own extended family. Here we were growing our own family, adding a third child. And I walked through as well the difficult and unexpected loss of my father, immediately into a new call of God on my life and our family's lives to plant a church, despite all of the displeasure that I shared with the Lord. And here we were, we found ourselves now adding a fourth daughter while navigating the launch of a brand new church plant. It was hard, but it was also the adventure of ministry. And God needed a committed leader, and this is who I had determined to be. In fact, I made the determination I would be that no matter the cost. And the first 2 years of planting a church, man, the roller coaster of emotion and energy, uncertainty of salary, being portable as a church in that environment, growth in my leadership that had to happen, a newfound adjustment, of course, now to what it looked like for people to leave. And by year 5, you might say that disillusionment had set in. It was in full bloom. Now we were in a leased space, striving to continue to reach people, trying to navigate reaching for the gospel. But here, my teammate left. For the first time, I felt alone. By the time that we hit anniversary number 10, nothing looked as I expected. I was completely intertwined with our church and with the ministry. If it succeeded, I had joy. If it suffered, I was miserable. And it seemed it was all on my shoulders. Now, we took some vacations over those years. We thought, of course, that's what we wanted to continue to do. It would help, but I could never afford to mentally leave, even on vacation. What some people may have described as adrenaline fatigue, it had a grip on me. I would work all day from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., many of those days without leaving for lunch in my small office, much of it alone, for nearly 5 years without a consistent day off, something that was planned. The summer when it all unraveled for me, though, I have to be honest, it was years in the making. And within a period of about 8 weeks, our small church plant had one elder that stepped out. This was a gentleman who had really started with me from the very beginning. Then a second elder and one of my friends was removed really confrontationally due to an affair. And then a new promising family, one that had just really come into the life of our church, they left. And as they left, they were firing accusations at me and my leadership. I felt I had vested 10 years of my life, and all I left feeling was inept and weak and broken. For me, it was the last straw. And I came home. Each of those moments, it was different. I was not able to rebound. I couldn't suck it up anymore. I began to emotionally unravel. I couldn't process. I couldn't think about what was next in ministry. I was emotional, it seemed, all the time. And when I was not emotional, I was just numb. I couldn't keep ministry going. I couldn't keep anything going. You see, I didn't have anything left. I needed help. Once I had maybe you would say an optimistic view of life, and now it all changed. I was pinpointing things that should be good things and would say those are the things that would unravel. What would be a plan B, I would look at and see still is not sufficient enough. The things that we would decide to do, I would say it was never enough because we were still vulnerable of the criticism of others. was at this point that my wife stepped in for my good. She began to connect with my friend and elder. She began to connect with other church leadership, and together we came up with a strategy that both cared for me and stabilized the church in this time. I was able to truly take time away. It wasn't like an ideal time, but it was enough. And as part of my story, the slow crawl back now could actually begin. So what's today look like? Well, I'm stronger today, if you'd have seen me back then, but still fragile. I've healed in so many ways, but I can still feel a rawness and a tenderness. As pastors, you and I, we're both purveyors of the things of God. You might say a bullhorn for His grace. Yet in our pain, sometimes we make attempts, and it's an attempt at selective amnesia. And I'm suggesting today it won't work for long. The soul can only take a certain number of licks. How many licks? You don't know. You don't know when you've hit a place where you can't return or you can't rebound. It's a dangerous place to be. I find that the platform for leadership is a perfect catalyst for burnout for so many people. Ministry leaders, they sit in a chair that's unique from most others that are seated around the table. There's a common tendency, really, if we're truthful, it's a badge of honor that we wear. And it's one that says leaders don't leave the table. We don't leave the leadership table. But the real weight begins to hit us, and it comes when we know we have both a calling by God to be in this chair of leadership that we occupy. And at some point along the way, we look, and the seat that used to be very comfortable as a leader suddenly feels like an unbearable weight with shackles holding you fast to that chair, with no hope of ever leaving. And that's what it was for me. Waking up and realizing I can't leave, I can't lead, I can't see beyond today, I can't motivate others, it seems I can't inspire anyone, I can't keep my head above the flooding waters of expectation, both of others, the expectation of myself, and for sure of my God. Though each pastor is offered a chair of leadership that's given to you by God, it never means that God abandoned His throne when He gave you a chair. Maybe God is urging you to see a valuable lesson. This was one that I slowly began to have pounded into my heart and brain, that leadership is not my life. It may be a gifting or calling, but it cannot be my master. So I still lead today. I'm not really fearful that I might return to this place, but there is definitely a soberness of my condition. Those who have been broken know what it feels like to be fragile. I've learned a few lessons along the way, and you might say I learned some the hard way. Lesson number one. Lesson one is that God heals burnout in leaders very differently. For some, God forges something within the leader, making them stronger for the new road ahead. This process, of course, involves the potter breaking and refashioning us for new purposes, new faithfulness to our Creator. For some, this may mean a new or changing role in ministry or a changing role maybe even in vocation. But God is forging you to have greater wisdom and maybe a different understanding of resilience for the new road that lies ahead. But for others, God, He renews differently. He reworks those not as forged but as fragile. These are the people that are made up as a mosaic piece, broken and yet still knitted together. If you looked closer and examined their life, you would discover that their life is actually comprised of hundreds of shattered pieces that make up what's beautiful. We're commissioned to live with the reminder of His strength in our weakness. You know the verses in 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9 and others. These are the men and women that return. They're not quite the same, but I want you to know God still sees beauty within you all the same. For those that are in the middle of this process, just a simple word of encouragement is that you go slow. In this book that we've talked about, you'll see this word, relapse is real. And God is doing one of these things in your life. He may have you somewhere in between the two. Don't rush the lesson, or you run the risk of a couple of things. One, you run the risk of abandoning a responsibility that God's given you before you've been released. The second is that you run the risk of choosing a new grassy side of ministry and only to discover that the reflection of this beautiful green you see is just unhealthy weeds from afar. I would have never dreamed that the path for me would look the way it does. Within 2 years of walking this road of burnout, God began to churn something new and led us to and through a church merger with another church plant. He ended up gifting me and giving me the gift of leading with another pastor in a different season. And in the process of all of that, protected the church and the body of believers where we were at. Lesson number 2. Lesson 2 is this: to rest, or our rest in the Lord, is going to require some intentional stops and some restoring rhythms. Of course, part of that is time away and vacation. Of course, 5 days would be a minimum as you're able to work that in annually. And I would say over a weekend, take that Sunday off. Don't choose this to be convenience based on the calendar of the church. Make a different set of priorities. Put money into it. Put deposits down. Share it. Communicate with others so that they can hold you accountable. European study of cardiology released a 40-year-long study. 1,222 men were divided into 2 groups in this study. One group was given intervention in the process. They were given workout routines and regimens, nutrition aid, life transitions and helps. And after 15 years of this 40-year-long study, here's what they discovered, is that part of the group that came, they still died earlier than they ever anticipated. And 15 years in, more actually died in the intervention group than in the test group. So here was their link, the one thing that they could correlate back: shorter and fewer days off. Here's what the study revealed: taking less than 3 weeks of an annual vacation in the life of these men equated to 37% greater risk of dying. Time off matters. Without that time off, you risk running out of energy and juice and just simply life. I planned my day off for months after I returned from my sabbatical. Probably still should. But what I discovered is a glaring weakness. I had no life outside of church. No hobby, no activity. A counselor asked me to write down the things that brought me joy, and I stared at him awkwardly for 3 minutes because I had nothing to write. Sabbath is another part that matters, not out of ritual, not out of a graded task, but an invitation for you to meet with Jesus. The place, the moment, an extended time to detach and to be restored. It matters. These things matter. They make a difference. These rhythms matter. Lesson 3. I must offer grace to myself. One of the discoveries that I found in counseling early in the process was that I offer grace to others, but seldom to myself. For me, it really was a gospel issue that I knew I was saved by grace theologically, but I still worked to produce grace, really the opposite of grace, in my ministry work. It was trying to earn His love in what I did for the Lord. It was something that I had missed what grace really meant. I found that I had to produce for the Lord. That was my thought. I need to see seasons that also need grace. Comprehending them different. I see this through seasons, and it changes how I can be healed by Him and how I hear Him. So now my approach to leadership and life and kingdom work, does it look different? Absolutely. The rhythms that I have to keep for me, well, one is I must eliminate hurry. That is me. I'm a hurry addict. My brain, my schedule, my soul is hurried. It means consciously improving at saying no. It involves me having boundaries to help avoid overcommitting to what really is a reasonable load. And here's what I've found: when I eliminate hurry, I actually can cease from striving, this sense of the peace of the Lord being given to us. When I cease from striving, I hear God whisper peace, and it comes in 1,000 courses, in calm or storm, in weeping and laughter. How would it look? How would life look different for you if you could eliminate hurry in your day? The second one is, for me, I must look for beauty in the things that I see. Because I'm in a hurry, I just miss it. My tendency is to miss beauty because of problems. I miss beauty because of problems. I call that leadership. God invites me to see His hand in all things, and He calls it discipleship. God enables me to be a better follower first before a leader. I must see the real seat that Jesus is offering me. And what He's offering me is a knee to be loved before a chair from which to lead. I'm seated on His knee and He begins to ask me, hey, do you see that? Are you seeing all the things that I'm doing and creating? But the catch is I have to accept the offer to sit with God. And when I do, I have to see His finger pointing at the things that bring Him pleasure, not at a finger pointing with disapproval back at me. It's grace. I see with grace. I get to see my daughters laughing. I don't miss it. I get to enjoy our silly dog, though he is annoying. I accept ministry, and that ministry comes with ups and downs. I get a chance to see, and maybe for the first time interpret correctly, the finality of a sunset that is God's grace to say to me, that's enough for today. So what are you missing around you right now that should be reminding you of the beautiful work and peace of God when you see it? He's offered us a knee today over a podium, over a stage, over a table or a title. And we must return to see as a child, to take in all of the moments of joy, the things that I missed when I focused on sitting in the wrong place. He loves you today. He loves you more than for what you do for Him. And I close on this verse. See what kind of love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called the children of God. And so we are. 1 John 3:1.